Welcome to Middle Math Academy, Multiplying Decimals level number 2. This is part of our differentiated series where we have 5 levels of challenge for every topic. Let's get started. Because we will be shading visual models, it's helpful if you have a highlighter or colored pencils in addition to your pencil, but if you don't, you can still make it work. Our learning targets today are I can use visual models to represent multiplying decimals, and I can write multiplication expressions from visual models. Before we dive in, rate yourself 1 through 5 on our learning targets, with 1 being the least confident and 5 being the most confident. We'll come back and rate ourselves after the lesson once we get some more practice. Let's take a look at our notes. Step 1 in our notes, we're going to shade in the first decimal vertically with 1 color. So you can see we shaded in 4/10 up and down vertically. Step number 2, we're going to shade in the second decimal, so 2/10 horizontally, and this will all be on the same grid. That's why it's helpful if you have a highlighter or colored pencils. And then step 3, the part of the grid that overlaps, in this case with yellow and blue, that is our product. That is our answer. So I'm going to zoom in just a little bit. You can see in this case, the yellow and blue overlap for 8 squares. So that is 8 hundredths. 8 out of the 100 squares in the grid are shaded. Make sure you have this down, and then we'll do some examples so it clicks a little bit more. The directions say use a highlighter and pencil to shade each model to represent the multiplication expression. Circle the product on the grid and write the product in your expression. Let's start with example A. We're going to start by shading 3/10 vertically. So take your highlighter or colored pencil and shade 3/10 or 3 rows of 10. Then we're going to shade 6/10 horizontally. So left to right, 6 rows of 10. Make sure you're doing this as well. And then the product is the part that overlaps. Okay, so that'll be this section right here that has the blue and yellow. And we have 18 squares that overlapped. So the way we can write that in our expression is 0.18 or 18 hundredths. Go ahead and complete example B, then come back to the video to check your work. Check your work for example B. Once you're done checking, complete example C. Then check in with your teacher to get feedback and get their initials. Come back to the video when you're ready for page 2. Complete only problem A, then come back to the video to check your work. Pause the video and check your work for problem A. Let's do problem B together. Problem B is a little bit different than the examples we did, but we're still going to follow the same steps. So we have 1.3 times 0.2. So we can think about this as 1 whole and 3/10. So we're still going to start by shading vertically 1 and 3/10. So we're going to shade this whole thing. There's 1. Make sure you're shading with me. And then we'll shade 3/10. 1, 2, 3. 3 rows of 10. 3 columns of 10. And then we'll follow our same next step of shading 2/10 horizontally. Now, when we do this, we're going to shade across both grids. Okay, so here's 1 row. I'm going to go across both. And then our second 10th, 2/10. And then just like we did before, we're going to determine the section that has the yellow and blue overlapping, which is right here. And let me show you a little bit of a better look. And we have a total of 26 squares that overlap. Make sure you have this down. Complete the rest of page 2, then check in with your teacher to get feedback. Complete page 3, then come back to the video to check your work. This video won't go over all of the problems, but we are going to check problems A and E. Let's start with problem A. Pause the video, check your work. Now let's take a look at problem E. Pause the video, check your work. Once you finish checking problem E, Go ahead, make sure you completed all of the problems on page 3, and then check in with your teacher to get additional feedback. On page 4, we're given a visual model, and we're asked to write a multiplication expression and circle the product on the grid. Let's start by taking a look at problem A. In problem A, we can see that our vertical lines represent 5/10 or 5 columns of 10. So I'm just going to write that here. Make sure you write with me. Then our horizontal rows, we have 8 rows of 10 that were shaded in. And then our product is represented by the dark section where those two shaded areas overlap. So if we count all of those squares, we'll count 40 dark squares. So what we need to do is we need to write our multiplication expression, 5/10 times 8/10 equals 40 hundredths. Make sure you have this down. Remember, you can always pause the video if you need more time. And then what we're going to do, go ahead and complete only problem B, then come back to the video to check your work. Check your work for problem B. If you had your vertical columns over here, that's totally fine. So if your product is right here, don't worry about it. It represents the same thing. And I wanted you to just see a different version of this. So you should have had 2/10 times 2/10 is 4 hundredths. Make sure this 4 is in the hundredth spot, not the tenth spot. There's only 4 out of 100 that overlap. 4/10 would mean that there were 4 rows of 10. Complete the rest of page 4. Once you're finished, check in with your teacher to get feedback. Come back to the video when you're ready for page 5. Page 5 is the same skill as page 4. So go ahead and complete only problems A and B, then come back to the video to check your work. Pause the video, check your work for problems A and B. Then complete the rest of page 5. Once you finish page 5, check in with your teacher to get their initials and more feedback. Complete all of page 6, then come back to the video to check your work. We won't go over all of these problems, but we will go over one. We're not going to go over the common misconception problem, but make sure that you do complete it. Let's take a look at our closing problem. For this problem, remember 1.5 we can think about as 1 whole and 5/10. The yellow section represents 1 and 5/10. The blue section on the visual model represents 4/10. And then the green section represents the overlapping parts, where if you count them, there will be 60 green squares. In other words, 6/10. Make sure to complete our debrief questions, as research says that debriefing can help lead to better retention. So in your own words, what did you learn today? How much effort did you put into class, 1 through 5? And what do you think is a common misconception or a common mistake students might make when multiplying decimals? Once you've done that, and you've answered all of the questions on page 6, you're going to go back to page 1. At the beginning of today's lesson, we rated ourselves before the lesson on our learning targets. Now that we've gotten some more practice, on page 1, you're going to rate yourself again on our learning targets, but this time under the after the lesson section. Once you finish page 6 and rated yourself on page 1, check in with your teacher to get additional feedback. Thank you for joining us today at Middle Math Academy, where we practiced multiplying decimals level number 2. This is part of our differentiated series where we have 5 levels of challenge for every topic. If you're looking for any additional practice, make sure to check out levels 1, level 3, level 4, or level 5. Thank you for joining us and have a wonderful day.